Other features of the discussion, in addition to those key elements we just discussed, are that you should discuss other relevant results and hypotheses. So not just the main answer to the research question, but you have other results in the study also. Go ahead and discuss those. Mention any possible errors. This is going to complement discussing the weaknesses of your study design, but it's a little bit different because this is focusing on the technical aspects. Maybe you had to use some instrumentation that has a certain error rate in it, and you might need to account for that as you talk about what your results mean. Point number 3 is you should also discuss any unexpected findings. Unexpected things happen all the time in science. And, sometimes you might feel like it's taking you off of your plan that you had so carefully designed. But these unexpected findings can be really exciting. Think about if the unexpected findings are bad for your study, then you can go back and rethink the research question so that the unexpected findings actually turn out to be good for your study. So don't try to minimize or hide any unexpected findings. Bring those out to the forefront and go ahead and discuss them. Also, indicate any new questions that arise. Now, this might be part of your future directions, but there might be other new questions that pop up. So now that you have discovered this specific thing that you discovered, you now have filled that knowledge gap, but maybe a new knowledge gap appears. And so this is something that readers get excited about when you have discovered a new knowledge gap as part of your analysis. So go ahead and point those out as well. Now, the whole point of publishing papers is to have impact in your field. So what does impact mean? Well, part of what impact means is citations. So you want other people to cite your work. That's one way to measure impact. Another way to measure impact is if people change their behavior after your work is published. So maybe your work is informing a policy or a common practice in your field, and people start doing things differently because of what you discovered. In that case, that's a very high impact. How do you show the readers the potential impact of your work? So there's a few things that you can do in the discussion section. Your work is going to be impactful if you can challenge an accepted idea, concept, or current paradigm. You will set that up in the introduction, but the discussion is when that comes to fruition. And if your results are showing that this current thought is not quite true, and you've contradicted it and you found the real truth, that's very impactful. Secondly, answering an unsolved question is very impactful. Now, of course, you're going to answer some unsolved questions. That's the whole purpose of setting up your research question. But maybe your research question is focused on something that has been a long-standing mystery in your specific field. So it's a big question that a lot of people have. So that's going to be more impactful than it's a very specific, small question that only a few people in the field have. This third one is related to that last point that we just talked about. If you can present a new finding or discovery that fills an important gap. So this is more geared towards the technology-driven type projects, where there's maybe a technology gap that you've discovered a new method or a new instrument or a new way of doing things that fills that gap. And finally, if during your discussion you can come up with the need for a new model, or even better, if you develop a model to explain your findings in the broader context. Having that model figure usually falls in the discussion section rather than the results section, and it's really powerful. Readers really like to see a model explaining the findings of their particular study. And usually that model will lead to a lot of new questions, a lot of new research questions, or a lot of new knowledge gaps will come out of such a model. So that will really make your work impactful if you can do that. I wanted to just put up a slide to remind you of the overall structure of a scientific paper in the graphical representation, which is the hourglass figure that we talked about before. We've already gone through the introduction and the materials and methods and the results on this hourglass figure. So now we're getting into the discussion section. And you can see it's kind of a mirror of the introduction section. So whereas the introduction section started with general information and became more specific, the discussion section is going to start with specific information and become more general. And the way you're going to set it up in this pyramid structure is to have the major new knowledge right at the beginning. And as you discuss that major new knowledge, you're going to reflect back to the research question, reflect back to the objectives, and discuss the answer in the context of those two portions of the paper that you had set up during the introduction. As you move through the discussion section, after the first paragraph, the next few paragraphs are going to be talking about the other new knowledge that you have generated. So other new knowledge 1, other new knowledge 2, etc. Also, as you develop through the discussion section, you're going to talk about how your new knowledge relates to the knowns. So reflect back to the knowledge gaps, and you're going to talk about how your results and findings filled the knowledge gaps that you pointed out during the introduction section. And finally, you'll end up talking about how your work creates new understanding. So you have to wrap all of this stuff into the discussion section. So it can be pretty challenging. And so this is why we're talking about all of these things in detail, so that you can be aware of what you need to accomplish in the discussion section. Let's elaborate a little bit on how to structure the discussion section. So as I mentioned, the first paragraph is going to contain the main take-home message, which is the answer to the research question. Now keep in mind that the answer is an interpretation of your specific results to generalize the findings to the broader context of your research question. You're not going to answer the research question by just repeating the results, but you do need to mention the results to support your answer to the research question. So again, discussion is interpreted results. As you answer your research question, you're interpreting your results, and you might be combining results from several different figures. You might have results from figure 3 and figure 5 and table 2 that when you put them together form the answer to the research question. It may not be one specific result, but a combination of those findings. So again, in this paragraph where you're answering the research question, it's coming from the results, but you don't repeat the results section. You need to interpret the results into new knowledge that answers the research question. And as you do that, you should refer to the figures that provided that result that you're interpreting. So refer back to figure 3 and figure 5 and table 2.